What if the Oilers' scouting presence at Thursday's Blues-Bruins game wasn't about fixing this season's goaltending disaster, but about orchestrating a franchise-altering move that won't happen until the summer? There's something deeply unsettling about watching your team put up 9 goals in a single night, a performance that should have every fan celebrating, and still feeling that gnawing anxiety in the pit of your stomach about whether it even matters. That's the reality Edmonton Oilers fans are living right now. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl combined for 8 points in Thursday's 9-4 demolition of the Seattle Kraken, a performance that would make any other franchise feel invincible. But when you're ranked 30th in team save percentage, when you've watched your championship window threatened by the one position that's supposed to be your foundation, even offensive explosions feel like temporary band-aids on a hemorrhaging wound. And while the Oilers were busy lighting up the scoreboard, their scouting staff was 2,500 miles away in Boston, watching the Bruins dismantle the St. Louis Blues 5-2. On the surface, it's routine business. Teams scout other teams constantly. But in Edmonton's current reality, where every goaltending rumor sends shockwaves through the fan base, nothing is routine anymore. Let's address the elephant in the room first. Jordan Binnington was between the pipes for St. Louis, and it was another performance that should have Oilers management questioning whether their reported interest makes any sense whatsoever. 5 goals allowed on 27 shots. That's an .815 save percentage in a game where Edmonton scouts were specifically in attendance. For weeks, Binnington's name has been circulating as a potential solution to Edmonton's goaltending crisis. The 32-year-old Stanley Cup champion with the aggressive, laterally skilled style that supposedly fits Edmonton's defensive system perfectly. The veteran who commands respect, who's proven he can perform under pressure, who Connor McDavid himself has praised. But here's the brutal reality that Thursday night reinforced. Binnington's current form is catastrophic. His .878 save percentage this season isn't just bad, it's barely better than what Edmonton is already getting. Yes, the analytical case suggests he could thrive in a different system with better defensive support. Yes, his playoff pedigree and championship experience are valuable intangibles. But at what point do you stop making excuses for declining performance and accept that a 32-year-old goaltender might simply be past his prime? If Edmonton scouts were there primarily to evaluate Binnington, they witnessed exactly why this trade would be a massive gamble, one that could blow up spectacularly in their faces. On the other end of the ice, Joonas Korpisalo was putting on a clinic, stopping 37 of 39 shots in the Bruins' victory. It was the kind of performance that makes backup goalies look like legitimate starters, the kind of game that gets agents' phones ringing. But let's be brutally honest. Korpisalo would represent a lateral move at absolute best for Edmonton. The 30-year-old journeyman has had moments of brilliance throughout his career, but he's never been a consistent number 1 option. His career .903 save percentage tells the story of a capable backup who occasionally gets hot, not a franchise-altering acquisition. Edmonton doesn't need another, maybe goaltender. They don't need someone who might work out if everything goes right. They need a proven, elite-level starter who can carry them through a playoff run. Korpisalo, for all his Thursday night heroics, isn't that guy. So, if the Oilers scouts weren't there primarily for Binnington, who had a terrible game, or Korpisalo, who isn't good enough, what were they really watching? The Swayman theory. Playing the long game here's where this story takes a fascinating turn that should have every Oilers fan simultaneously excited and frustrated. Sitting on the Boston bench, watching Korpisalo steal his start, was Jeremy Swayman, the 27-year-old all-star netminder who represents exactly the kind of goaltender Edmonton desperately needs. Swayman isn't just good, he's legitimately elite. His .916 save percentage over the past 3 seasons ranks among the NHL's best. He's proven he can handle a starter's workload. He's performed in playoff pressure situations. He's young enough to be a long-term solution, but experienced enough to contribute immediately. He's exactly the profile that Edmonton should be targeting. But here's the catch that makes this entire scenario so maddeningly complicated. Boston isn't trading him. Not now. Not while they're sitting in a playoff spot at 16-13-0. Not while Swayman is playing well and giving them a legitimate chance to compete. The Bruins aren't sellers, which means Swayman isn't available, at least not until the summer. And that's precisely why Edmonton's scouting presence at Thursday's game is so intriguing. Stan Bowman, Edmonton's general manager, is walking a tightrope that would make most executives break out in cold sweats. The immediate pressure is suffocating. Fans want a goaltending upgrade now. The team's championship window is open now, and every game with subpar net-minding feels like a wasted opportunity. But the harsh reality of the NHL trade market is that the best goaltenders almost never become available mid-season. Teams that have elite goaltending don't trade it, especially not when they're competing for playoff spots. The goaltenders who do become available mid-season are usually flawed in some significant way, whether it's declining performance, injury concerns, or contract issues. This is where the Swayman scenario becomes genuinely fascinating. If Boston falls out of the playoff race in the second half of the season, if they decide to retool or rebuild, if they determine that Swayman's contract, 8 years, $66 million signed last summer, is too expensive for a non-contending team, then suddenly one of the NHL's premier goaltenders could become available. And if Edmonton has been doing their homework, scouting him, building relationships with Boston's front office, understanding what it would take to acquire him, they'd be positioned to make a move that could define the franchise for the next decade. Let's break down why Swayman represents such a dramatically superior option compared to the other names Edmonton has been linked to age and contract. At 27, Swayman is entering his prime years as a goaltender. His 8-year contract provides long-term stability and certainty, something Edmonton desperately needs. Compare that to Binnington, 32 years old, declining performance, or Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, 26 but with catastrophic recent numbers. Performance consistency. Over the past 3 seasons, Swayman has been remarkably consistent, maintaining elite save percentages even as Boston's defensive structure has evolved. He's not a one-year wonder or a system goalie. He's legitimately excellent. Playoff experience. Swayman has started playoff games for a contending team. He understands the pressure, the intensity, the mental fortitude required. That experience is invaluable and impossible to replicate. Stylistic fit. Like Binnington, Swayman plays an aggressive, athletic style that would complement Edmonton's defensive approach. But unlike Binnington, he's doing it at an elite level right now, not 3 years ago. Upside versus risk. Acquiring Swayman would be expensive. Boston would demand premium assets. But the risk of failure is dramatically lower than gambling on a reclamation project like Luukkonen or a declining veteran like Binnington. Here's where the strategy becomes incredibly risky and potentially brilliant in equal measure. If Edmonton's plan is to make a major goaltending upgrade in the summer, whether it's Swayman or someone else, then they need to survive this season with their current tandem of Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard. That's a terrifying proposition when you're ranked 30th in team save percentage. It means accepting that you're going to lose games you should win because of goaltending. It means hoping that McDavid and Draisaitl can outscore the problems. It means praying that Skinner finds consistency or that Pickard can steal enough games to keep you afloat. The alternative, making a desperation move for someone like Binnington or Luukkonen, could provide marginal improvement, but at the cost of assets that might be better used in a summer blockbuster. It's the classic dilemma of short-term relief versus long-term solution. Let's be realistic about what acquiring Swayman would cost. Boston isn't giving away a 27-year-old all-star goaltender for spare parts. They'd want premium assets, likely a combination of high draft picks, top prospects, and possibly roster players. Edmonton would need to be willing to part with significant pieces of their future. First-round picks, prospects like Matthew Savoy or Bo Akey, potentially a roster player to make the cap math work. It would be painful and it would mortgage some of the team's future depth. But here's the counterargument. When you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in their primes, when your championship window is definitively open, you make those moves. You sacrifice future assets for present success. You accept that building through the draft is a luxury you can't afford when you have generational talent that won't last forever. The massive flaw in the wait for Swayman in the summer strategy is obvious. What if Boston doesn't collapse? What if they make the playoffs, go on a run, and decide they're still contenders? What if Swayman continues playing well, and the Bruins have zero interest in trading him? Then Edmonton has wasted an entire season with inadequate goaltending, hoping for a solution that never materialized. They'd enter next summer back at square one, searching for options in a market that might be even thinner than this year's. That's the gamble Bowman is making if he's truly playing the long game. It's a calculated risk that could pay enormous dividends or blow up catastrophically. Here's a potential middle ground strategy that might make sense. Acquire Binnington now as a short-term upgrade, assuming he'd waive his no-trade clause, ride him through the season and the playoffs, then pursue Swayman or another elite option in the summer. Binnington's contract runs through 2028 to 29, which creates complications. But if Edmonton believes he can provide even marginal improvement over their current situation, it might be worth the gamble. The risk is that you're committing $6 million in cap space to a declining goaltender, which could hamstring your ability to make other moves. But if the alternative is watching another season slip away because you couldn't stop the puck, maybe that risk is acceptable. If Edmonton scouts were in Boston, primarily to evaluate Jeremy Swayman with an eye toward a summer blockbuster, it represents sophisticated long-term thinking that should be applauded. Swayman is exactly the kind of goaltender who could transform this franchise, who could be the final piece that turns perennial contenders into actual champions. But the immediate reality is brutal. Edmonton is 30th in team save percentage right now. Not in the summer. Not next season. Right now. And every game that passes with inadequate goaltending is another game that could haunt them in the standings, another opportunity wasted, another step closer to explaining to McDavid why they couldn't solve the problem that's been plaguing them for years. The question Bowman needs to answer is whether he believes this current roster with this current goaltending can survive until summer. Can they make the playoffs? Can they win a round or two? Can they keep the championship window open long enough to execute the big move? If the answer is yes, then playing the long game for Swayman makes perfect sense. If the answer is no, then they need to act now, even if it means settling for a less-than-ideal option like Binnington. The trade deadline is approaching. Boston's season could go in multiple directions. Swayman's availability could change overnight. And Edmonton's goaltending situation remains a ticking time bomb that threatens to explode at the worst possible moment. Thursday night's scouting mission to Boston might have been routine reconnaissance, or it might have been a first move in a chess game that won't conclude until summer. Either way, it's a reminder that in today's NHL, solving goaltending problems requires patience, strategy, and a willingness to think multiple moves ahead. The Oilers scouts saw Binnington struggle and Swayman sit on the bench. They gathered information, made assessments, and reported back to management. Now, Bowman has to decide, do you make the move that's available now, or do you wait for the move that might be available later? Connor McDavid is 28 years old. The championship window won't stay open forever. And somewhere in Edmonton, the pressure is building to make the decision that changes everything. What's your take? Should the Oilers go all in on a goaltender now, or is waiting for a summer blockbuster the smarter play? Drop your thoughts below, and smash that like button if you want more deep dive analysis on the biggest storylines shaping Edmonton's season.